Welcome, Lieutenant General Asit Mistry. Decorated soldier of the Indian Army, somebody who was awarded all kinds of, medals, AVSM, PVSM, with the highest of orders in the Indian Army. I mean, three-star General, Lieutenant General Asit Mistry is only the third Gujarati to become a Lieutenant General. And also, he is the director of Rashtriya Rakshak University, an institute of national importance based out of Gujarat. This is a university which produces the top and the finest minds of police and police personnel and defense personnel. A university created with a lot of research. Lieutenant General Asit Mistry today has been invited in the Vision India Forum's Road to 2047 series, which is documenting with monologues the best and finest of minds on subjects varied. You know, areas of expertise of these individuals are being documented as a repository for the nation and the world to, rummage through when we enter the final quarter now of the India's independent history and finally becoming #1 country in the world by 2047, which is the Amrit Kal period now. Let me welcome Asit Mistry, Lieutenant General Asit Mistry, the former commandant of the NDA, the premier institution which produces the entire services top brass of the country. From NDA, these young boys go to various different fields. He was the commandant of NDA, somebody who knows how to produce leaders of the highest quality to protect India, to protect the world. He was also with the UN Peacekeeping Force, and as a young commando, he also worked with the NSG. Lieutenant General Asit Mistry, take us through NDA, a bit about your career to start with, and then NDA, and then finally about the Rashtriya Rakshak University, which had its convocation decorated with the presence of the Honorable Prime Minister last year.
Thank you, Mr. Amit Goenka, for inviting me and asking me to talk about NDA. For all ex-NDAs, it's always a great honor and a privilege to talk about NDA. We all become very nostalgic, fondly recalling our days at NDA. It's one of the most iconic institutes of India. That was created in the wake of World War II with the lessons that emerged out of that war. The primary requirement was to create a new generation of officers for the armed forces who would be ready to fight the new kind of warfare that the post-World War II era envisioned. And one of the primary lessons of the war was that you cannot have a single service fighting any war in future. If you want to do anything meaningful in future warfare, you will have to be one. And therefore, the idea of a tri-services academy was, that came up. The idea was to inspire tri-services synergy right at the foundational level, right at the induction level of the officer cadre. And thus, the concept of NDA emerged. As an interim arrangement, it started on 1st of January 1949 as Inter-Services Wing or a Joint Services Wing as part of the Indian Military Academy at Dehradun. The initial campus was at Clement Town, while the permanent campus started coming up at Khadakwasla near Pune, which was formally inaugurated in January 1955. So that has been the origin of NDA. And since then, NDA has produced nearly 40,000 officers over the last 75 years. As you are aware, NDA has entered its 75th year and would be completing its 75 years of existence on 16th January 2024. And the celebrations have already started in various forms or other.
So this is a very, very special year to invite somebody who knows India by the back of his hand, not only as a cadet who passed out of it, but also somebody who produced cadets from it. Somebody who knows over the last 75 years how NDA has evolved. Take us through the history of evolution of NDA over the past 75 years.
Well, incidentally, I'm also father of an ex-NDA. So not only have I been an NDA cadet and later had the honor to be the commandant, but also have been, a father of an ex-NDA cadet. So I have seen it in more ways than one. And to say the least, that this is an institute that was far ahead of its time when it was conceived in all manners and dimensions. Firstly, the whole concept of having one common academy to train the officer cadets of all the three services was something that nobody else in the world had tried. It imparted an integrated form of training which focused on the intellectual, moral, and physical development of the cadets. The intellectual growth and development focused on both the academic training as well as professional training, particular to their own service, as well as tri-services aspects. The moral aspects dealt with leadership and other elements of developing the personality and character of the cadets who would be potential officers. The kind of academic curriculum that was created was again something far, far ahead of its time. What today people refer to as liberal education, NDA envisaged that way back in the early 50s. And since then, that concept has been practiced. Irrespective of what stream, earlier, there were only two streams of academic education. There was the science stream and the non-science stream, or the humanities stream. So irrespective of what stream you pursue, you studied subjects of both the science as well as humanities, irrespective of what was your mainstream. And the same concept has been followed even when you today have four streams, which includes a computer science stream and the BTech wing. Today, all the Air Force and the Naval cadets undergo a full-fledged 4 years BTech program, of which 3 years are completed at NDA, and the 4th year is completed at their respective service academies. Whereas the Army cadets continue to pursue the BA, BSc, and the BSc Computer Science academic program. The service training acts again as a foundation to introduce the cadets to their primary service responsibility, as also the tri-services aspect. So they learn about not only their own service, but about the other two services. And later on, graduate to go and complete the 4th year of their training in their respective service academy to pursue more detailed professional part of their training curriculum.
And, what basically distinguishes NDA from other professional institutions? I mean, academic institutions, like probably the best of them would be the IITs or the IIMs. How different, apart from the physical aspect of the training, what distinguishes NDA? When even if I was talking to the XLRI director today morning, he said ethics is what our basic principle was founded upon. So, I mean, even an XLRI has ethics as its basic, element. So, for a management education, so how different would NDA find itself from its other competitive institutions to produce leaders who serve in the defense forces?
See, I mean, this whole the concept of this three strands of the training or education, the intellectual, the moral, and the physical, is all combined together to produce very balanced military officers. The main ingredient of this training, while the time is taken by the academic pursuits, but the unique blend of moral and leadership training that is imparted in NDA is something no other academy or institute is able to achieve. And that is the hallmark of NDA. The kind of teamwork, the kind of ethos, the values that NDA creates, nobody else has been able to create. The kind of sacrifice, the motto of NDA, service before self, is not only, it's spoken, but it is practiced in every dimension of the cadet's life. The learning in NDA is almost a 24/7 process. You're learning while you are in classes. You are learning while you are in your mess, having your meals. You are learning even while you are pursuing your self-studies. You are learning while you are playing games. So there is a constant learning process. The senior cadets start imparting leadership, practicing leadership when they are training their junior cadets. And it's a very slow process of osmosis over 6 terms that you create men out of young boys. Even when the Capacity Building Commission of the Government of India, which is reviewing, training establishments all over the country, when they visited NDA, they were impressed by the whole approach and the concept of training, and particularly the kind of ethics and moral upbringing that the NDA brings about. The element of self-sacrifice, of not leaving a man behind, is ingrained into the cadets right from their first day in the academy.
In terms of producing leaders for all the 3 forces, what are the distinguishing qualities that propel somebody from the common basket of an India cadet to joining the army or the air forces or the navy? What are the distinguishing qualities?
See, there are a lot of distinguishing qualities of an NDA officer, because you are firstly inducting them at a much tender age, much more trainable age. They are inducted at the age between 16 to 18, 18 and a half, as against other academies where graduate cadets are inducted, so they are much higher age profile. So their trainability factor is comparatively lower. Secondly, you're imparting a 4 years long training package. It is 3 years at NDA and the 4th year at the respective service academy. So again, you are investing far more time in training this cadet. So therefore, the kind of product that ultimately emerges is far, far superior. The kind of bonding that the NDA cadets undergo, the team building activity is a very, very conscious part of the training at NDA. You start identifying with your squadrons. You compete for your squadrons. Now, that is a process of the individual identity getting itself subsumed into the group identity, and which then builds up the group dynamics. As cadets grow in age and service in the academy from first term to second term and so on, and then they start assuming cadet appointments, which gives them a practical experience of practicing leadership. All activities that are designed in NDA, whether it is the physical activity, it is sports, it is the camps, everything is structured to build this concept of team spirit and leadership and morals and ethics. Any kind of moral dilution is very severely punished. If there is any kind of moral compromise, the minimum punishment that a cadet would get is loss of 6 months of seniority. And if the offense is a little more grave, then the least he would suffer is an expulsion from NDA, which is referred to as withdrawal. So therefore, there is extremely serious consequences of any kind of moral turpitude. Then NDA follows what is known as NDA Honor Code, where every cadet is expected to uphold that NDA code, the honor code, that an NDA cadet shall not lie, cheat, and do any kind of moral compromise. And if such an act or an incident happens, then their fellow cadets themselves sit on judgment over the conduct of that cadet. Now, that is something very, very unique to NDA. And this, all this combined process produces a unique brand of offices.
Why only restrict?
Excuse
Why are the numbers so limited to 1,500, 2,000?
No, today the numbers are much more. The numbers is basically your capacity based on your
So
infrastructure that
your camera is off track.
the problem is the infrastructure that you have. So initially, to begin with, NDA had only 12 squadrons. Each squadron could house about 120 cadets. So that was your cap. But over a period of time, the infrastructure has been extended. And today you have over 18 squadrons are there. And today, per course, the capacity, which earlier used to be about 250 to 300, has now been increased to 390. On an average, every course today has got 370 odd Indian cadets, and there are 20 odd international cadets. So nearly almost 400 cadets to a course, 6 courses at a time. So you have a capacity of almost 2,400 cadets today. So there has been a substantial increase in the capacity.
And when we talk about NDA, I mean, what do you think is expected of the government of India? Because over the last 75 years, evolution has happened. The way the world dynamics have functioned have changed. Today, the kind of trainings, the kind of exposure that an India cadet needs is probably different from what he or she needed probably 30 years back. So how do you think, and what is your expectation from the government going forward?
See, this was an institute that has been, given the highest of support from the government right from its conception level. Initially, the then Viceroy, Mountbatten, and the then CNC of Indian Army, Field Marshal Auchinleck, were themselves involved. In fact, Field Marshal Auchinleck headed the committee that came up with the concept proposal of establishing an academy of this nature. So right from that time, NDA has had the highest level of patronage from the government of India. Subsequently, in the post-independence period, the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, himself was involved in the planning and bringing up construction of NDA. He was a very frequent visitor to Khadakwasla. And since then, it has always had the best of patronage from the government because it is your iconic institute. Most of the head of states, while on a state visit, have come and visited NDA, including Queen Elizabeth way back in 81, 82, around that time, 82, 83. So NDA has had the best of support from the government. In terms of its training curriculum and infrastructure, I already told you about the upgradation of the infrastructure, but the training curriculum has also been dynamic. There is a structured process of review of curriculum. Every 5 years, there is a formal structured review of training curriculum and syllabus, and inputs are taken from all the 3 services. So it's a very dynamic process. It's not something that is frozen in time. So India has always kept itself up with the times.
International exchanges with peers, foreign peers?
Yes. Firstly, as I told you, per course there are 20 foreign cadets in every course. So on an average, you have 120, 130 odd foreign cadets being trained in NDA at any given time. Secondly, there are exchange visits with friendly foreign countries. Cadets from NDA visit them, and similarly, cadets from those countries also come and spend a week to fortnight and learn about each other. And these countries include, or the academies include the West Point, the Sandhurst of UK, West Point of US, the National Defense Academy of Japan, as also the Australian Defense Academy. Incidentally, the Australian Defense Academy is modeled on the lines of our own NDA. Similarly, Nigeria also decided to follow suit and have created an academy based on the lines of NDA. And incidentally, that also has an acronym of NDA. Of course, it stands for Nigerian Defense Academy. And India gave extensive assistance in setting up that academy. Indian officers had been given on loan to Nigeria to set up that academy. So there is a fair amount of international exchange, and subject matter experts are exchanged and so on. So in terms of its capabilities, NDA is one of the finest in the world.
How do you cope with cases of breakdowns that keep surfacing at NDA, and it's not a hidden fact. Basically, a lot of candidates who opt for an NDA are not mentally or physically prepared to the rigors of the course. So, what are the special arrangements you have? Something which could also be replicated by the IITians, by the IITs, the 2023 top IITs today, who face a lot of flack for the kind of rising number of cases of breakdowns, suicides, and all.
Well, see, firstly, the whole entrance process of NDA is most unique. No other institute has such an extensive selection process. First and foremost, every potential cadet has to appear in a UPSC written entrance examination. Those who clear the written entrance examination undergo a 5-day services board interview process. Now, which institute or organization in the world spends 5 to 6 days paying, including for the travel to and fro for those potential candidates, and testing them in a